In this video, I'm going to show you how to answer the questions from the article on productivity. The first question asks us to use the data in Table 2 to calculate an index of labour productivity using 2007 as the base year, and then comment on our results. So I've got the data here in this spreadsheet, and to calculate a measure of labour productivity, I first divide GDP by the number of employed. So I take the cell for GDP for 2007 and then divide that by the number in the cell for employment for that year. This gives me a value of 55.73667. Now I want to express that as an index using 2007 as the base year. So what I'm going to do is refer to this cell, then multiply by 100 and then divide by the value 55.73667. This will give me a value of 100 for 2007. If I then copy those two cells down, so I highlight them and then drag this down here, then this will recalculate for each year. And you see here it's calculated now an index with 2007 as 100 and for all subsequent years up to 2013. Now to make it easier to read, I'm going to cut down on the number of decimal places. So I'm going to use this button here to adjust the number of decimal places so each number is expressed to one decimal place. And we see from that that the index starts at 100, then it declines quite rapidly to 96.1 in 2009, then it recovers somewhat to 98.9 in 2013, but productivity, as measured by labour productivity, is still lower in 2013 than it was at the peak of the previous cycle in 2007. So this indicates the productivity problem that we talked about in the article. Question 2 asks us to calculate a similar productivity index for the recession of the early 1990s. In this case, we're going to use 1990 as the base year, since that was the peak year of the business cycle of the early 1990s. So first of all, we calculate a measure of productivity by dividing GDP by the number employed for 1990. Then we want to express this in index form. So to do that, I'm going to perform the following calculation. I'm going to take 100 multiplied by my productivity measure, and then I'm going to divide again by that number, 39.3876, and that creates a base year of for 1990 of 100. Now I'm going to copy those cells down. That gives me a measure of productivity for each year during that particular business cycle. And again, I'm going to use this button to adjust the number of decimal places so each number is expressed to one decimal place. Now from this we see something rather interesting. In sharp contrast to the recession of the 2007 to 2013, we see that in the 1990s productivity actually increased relative to the base year. We start off with an index of productivity of 100, and then as the recession hit, productivity actually went up and continued to rise throughout the period. So we've got very different behaviour of productivity in the current recession from the recession of the early 1990s. Question 3 asks us to graph the two indices we've calculated in questions 1 and 2 on the same diagram so that we can comment on any similarities and or differences between the behaviour of labour productivity in the two recessions. Now this is going to be easier if I have the data in columns next to each other. So I'm going to copy the data for the 1990s recession here, and I do that by highlighting it first of all, then pressing Ctrl+C to copy this to the clipboard. Then I want to paste this into column D, so I move the cursor here to cell G3 and then use paste, and I want to paste the numbers rather than the formulas, so I'm going to click here on paste values. That will copy the data to this column. Now I want to plot this on a graph, so to do that I highlight the data that I want to plot, and then I use here insert line followed by this icon here. That will create a line graph of the two series. And if we do this, we see the very different behaviour of productivity in the two recessions. The blue line here is the recession beginning in 2007, where we see productivity falling in the first 2 years, then recovering somewhat, but still not regaining the original level of productivity by the end of the period. For the recession of the 1990s, however, we see that productivity actually increases right through the period. So we have very different behaviour of productivity in the current recession from the recession of the early 1990s.